Hello and welcome back to my brand new base. Thanks for joining me today. Today we are going to go into my brand new workshop and work on auto crafting in our Emmy crafting system. So, auto crafting. One of the first things that we're going to have to do today is to create a Emmy Controller. So that we can use, and I actually have everything ready for this, so that we can use more than 8 channels. Without an Emmy Controller, you can only have 8 devices that use data on your Emmy system, and right now we have exactly 8. We have 1, 2, and then we have 6 items down, or 6 things downstairs, mostly buses and things like that. But this, when we set up our auto crafting system, we're going to be using a lot more channels, so we're going to need this Emmy Controller. And for now, I'm just going to stick it right here, and you can see it lights up, and it's going to be, let's see, did that connect here? Oh, it did connect there. I didn't really want it to, but that's fine. We'll have 8 channels on each side using the glass cables, and then if we use the dense cables, we can have up to 16 channels coming out of each side of this thing. So theoretically, we can have up to, what, 96 channels coming out of this Emmy Controller. Actually, you know what? That is not a very good place for it. I'm probably going to end up moving it maybe over here, because this is where I want to put all our auto crafting stuff. So what we're going to need for the auto crafting, a couple things. We're definitely going to need more glass cables. We don't have any right now. Do we have any conduits? Okay, we do have Emmy conduits, and I do plan on changing out. Actually, come to think of it, I'm just going to make a whole bunch of Emmy conduits. You might notice I added a few more Emmy drives. I also have this one, which is a 64K drive. I have all these 4K drives, and each one of these drives allows you to store 63 different types of items and up to 4,096 bytes. This one, it's the same number of items, 63 items, but it's 65,536 bytes, which means that we can have more of each item. So things like things that we have a lot of, like gravel and dirt and stuff, will end up in there. Well, things that aren't in barrels, but we were kind of running out of drives. Some of those high count items were taking up several drives. Oops. Okay, so while that's going on, there are 2 things that we're going to need for our auto crafting system. One of them is a molecular assembler. That's this guy right here. And I think I actually have everything for this already. Yep. So the annihilation core and the formation core, which both use logic circuits. Now eventually we're going to be probably needing several of these, but for now I'm just going to create one. And the molecular assembler allows us to craft things that we can craft in a crafting table. We can teach it to craft things that we would craft in a crafting table. So anything we can craft in a crafting table, we can teach the AE system to craft in the molecular assembler. And then using Emmy Interfaces. That's these guys. And then we can also use Emmy Interfaces. Oh, darn it. We're going to need more of these formation and annihilation cores, which are basically just logic processors, Fluix dust, and nether quartz for the annihilation core, and Certus quartz, Fluix dust, and logic processor for the formation core. So I'm going to make a bunch of these off camera, a bunch of these Emmy interfaces, because we can use the Emmy interfaces on our molecular assembler. We can use up to 6 on here, 1 on each side, and each molecular or each interface will allow us to craft oh boy, I don't remember, a certain number of items. I'll show you that in a second. And then we can also attach those things to other machines. We can attach a Emmy interface to a sag mill and teach our Emmy system how to do anything that we can do in a sag mill or any other machine, our alloy smelter or whatever. So we're actually going to have separate machines set up over here that we're going to teach our system to do some crafting in. And then we're also going to teach it how to craft its own machines and that would be the inscriber. And then we're also going to teach it how to do this, making crystals, making pure crystals and Fluix crystals using the crystal growth accelerator and the puddle of water. That is going to be a very complicated process that we may or may not get into in this episode. Alright, I made myself some ME conduits, which these are actually an Ender IO conduit. And the nice thing about them is that you can run them with other Ender IO conduits. So I replaced that glass cable that I had hanging in the middle of the room here with the Emmy conduit. You do need glass cable to connect to the to different components, especially the things that are partial block pieces like the storage bus. But we can use Emmy conduit everywhere else. It is a little bit more expensive. It costs the same as the regular glass cable, Quartz Fiber and 2 Fluix crystals, but plus you also have these conduit binders, which are actually really cheap to make anyway. So I like to do that. I really like to work with the Ender IO conduits. I think they look a little bit nicer and they're just easier to work with in most cases. So over here I have my Emmy controller set up. I have one of the interfaces. I made a whole bunch of these Emmy interfaces, and then I have the molecular assembler. Now the interface can be a block, or it can be a a panel, I guess you could call it. The block actually transfers electricity, power, so that's why I have a block here. On the other sides I'm going to use the panel so that we can run the cabling through there, because we're probably going to end up with a string of these things in the future, a string of these molecular assemblers. So each Emmy interface stores, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 patterns. So, and we can put 6 of them on here, so we can have up to 54 patterns in each for each molecular assembler. So that means we can tell it to remember 54 different crafting recipes. So I have one cable to connect here, and once we connect that, our Emmy controller lights up and it starts filling up with power, and it's also using power. This thing actually uses a decent amount of power. I don't actually remember exactly how much it uses, but and now we can actually start dropping some patterns in here, and we'll be able to do some auto crafting. With that, we'll start with that, and then I'm actually going to set up over here. I'm going to set up a sag mill and 2 alloy smelters over here, and we're going to stick Emmy interfaces on those so we can teach our system how to do some smelting and sag milling, do some grinding and stuff. So it'll be pretty cool. But first I wanted to make, first we have to make some patterns. They're called blank patterns. Okay, blank pattern. And it's pretty cheap, just a few pieces of glowstone, some quartz glass, and some iron ingots. And we're going to need one of these for each crafting recipe that we want to create. So we're going to need quite a few of these things. Where did that recipe go again? There it is. We're going to need some quartz glass. Might as well make that much. But first we're going to need a pattern terminal in order to create our patterns, and we're going to have to, basically we're going to take this crafting terminal and mix it with an engineering processor. Where did it go? There it is. And we get a pattern terminal. So it's just a crafting terminal, engineering processor. That's the diamond one. Stick that back on there. And now we have a very similar interface to what we had before, but now we also have this thing that allows us to encode patterns. So we can stick our blank patterns in there, and let's say we want to teach our crafting system how to make, how about a basic capacitor, because we make those all the time. So we can just set up the crafting recipe and go boom. And now this is encoded to automatically craft a basic capacitor. And we might actually also want to tell it how to make gold nuggets, just in case we don't have any. How to craft a gold nugget. If we ask it to craft a basic capacitor, it will craft the nuggets for us. So let's demonstrate. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to actually show you an easier way to do this. We don't actually have to go to the Emmy interface to do this, but you can see if I hold down the shift key, it shows us what that pattern is, and if I put it in here, it shows us what it is. So these are our two patterns that we have encoded so far. Now we can go here and check for basic capacitor. We can see that our basic capacitor now shows that we can craft it. And actually, if we look at our gold nuggets, we can see we can also craft gold nuggets. So let's start with a basic capacitor, and let's say we want a basic capacitor. We want one of them. We could tell it we want 10 or 100 or whatever, but we're just gonna say we want one, and it's gonna tell us, okay, we have a piece of gold available. We have 2 redstone and we have 1 copper, so it's telling us exactly what it's going to use, and it's going to craft 9 nuggets, and it's going to craft our basic capacitor. No crafting CPUs are available. Oh yes, and we need a crafting CPU. I forgot about that. Just like with the crafting, just like with the storage, the storage cells that we created for here, we have different sizes, which can store different amounts. The storage is a little different with this. It isn't just storing the items, but it's actually storing the crafting recipe. So if you have to make a really complicated crafting recipe, it would need more storage. So we're just going to start out with a 4K crafting storage right now, and we're going to need to make a crafting unit, and then this 4K Emmy storage component, which is actually the same thing we made when we made our 4K storage cells. So 3 of these 1Ks, so we're going to need a calculation processor, and then 3 logic processors. That'll be nice when we'll be able to auto-craft this. And then we need to make the crafting unit, which also needs 2 calculation processors, so that's 3 altogether, and then another logic processor. So 3 calculation processors, 4 logic processors, and I will do that off camera. Okay, so I'm just going to show you real briefly what I'm doing here, just in case you had not seen this before. To make our calculation processors, we need pure Certus quartz, and then we're also going to need redstone and silicon. So we put our calculation press in here, the one that we got out of our meteorite. Put some pure Certus quartz in there, and it makes our printed calculation circuits, which we can then use with our silicon, with our printed silicon, to make redstone and the silicon. Mix those 3 and we end up with our calculation processor. Unfortunately, we can only do 1 at a time right now, but of course we will be auto-crafting this in the future. And the same thing basically for the logic circuit. It's the same process for the logic circuit, except in that case we use the logic press, which I don't have in my inventory right now, and the silicon and the redstone. And gold. We use gold with the logic press. Alright, there's our 4K crafting storage. So we can put this guy, well, really anywhere on our network. Just remembering that without dense cable we can only have 8 channels on each side. see where would be a good place to put this guy. I'm actually just going to put it right there for now, and then we can branch off of that. Oh, I didn't. But we don't want that to connect because we don't want that to be a part of this channel, or this, because we already have 8. We already have 8 things on that channel. So, all right. So we now have a crafting terminal. Actually made another recipe while we were there. Quartz glass. So, whoops. So now we can demonstrate this. So we now basically have the minimal system needed to do some auto crafting. So we can now make a basic capacitor. We should be able to. And we can tell it to choose our crafting CPU automatically. We only have 1, so it doesn't really matter. Or we can specify that we want to use CPU number 0, which is the only one we have. So we click start. And there we have it, our basic capacitor. It made it for us. And if we look at our gold, we can see that we have 5 gold nuggets left because it made 9 and it used 4. So cool, we just did our first auto crafting. Yay! Oops. Now we're going to teach it how to auto craft some machines. I'm going to steal this machine. Whoops, that was an accident. Because we're not using it for anything else. I'm going to put this over here, and we can put our Emmy interface right there, and actually it's not going to let me use Emmy conduit here, so we have to use glass cable, which I think I used all my glass cable in crafting recipes, but let me just check in here. Oh no, I've got some right here. Cool. Whoops. Okay. So to teach it how to craft for a machine, we switch from a crafting pattern to a processing pattern. We put the ingredients. So let's say we want to tell it sand makes glass. Boom. We code the pattern. We can go down here. Oops. Go here. Stick it in our Emmy interface, and it now knows that this machine can make glass if we give it sand. But it does need power. Power buffer filled up. We want to change this to furnace only mode. We're going to have 2 alloy smelters set up. One that's going to be furnace only, and the other that's going to be set up for alloys. And the reason we're going to do that is because if we try to make glass in here, it's going to end up making what is that called? Quite clear glass, I think it is, if it's not in furnace mode. And there's a lot of situations where we're going to want to make sure that the machine itself is in either furnace mode or alloys mode. Okay. So now, let's see, do we have glass? We already have glass in here, but I'm going to get rid of that. And let's see what happens when we tell it to make 10 pieces of glass. So it's going to tell us we need 10 pieces of sand, or 10 blocks of sand. We click start, and we should start seeing some glass showing up. But if we go down here, yep, we should see that it's cooking up here, and it should be getting pulled right back into the Emmy system after it's done. What's going on? Oh, okay, I figured out the problem. It was the configure IO was set to pull and only pull, so it wasn't able to push into the Emmy interface. So it's gone now, which means it should be upstairs in here, and there it is. There's our 10 glass. So now we don't have to stick sand in a furnace anymore, or an alloy smelter or anything, because we can let the system do it for us whenever we need glass. And if we have another recipe that needs glass, it'll automatically smelt it for us. So we can do that with all our recipes. I'm probably going to do that with conduit binder, and some of this conductive iron, and many of these multi-layer crafting recipes are going to become so much more, so much less tedious. Okay, so now with these, just to show you how these plates, or how these guys work. Oops. Now you can actually craft stuff in the molecular assembler manually, but I mean, what's the point? So I'm going to do that. I'll do it on the bottom too. We can put one of these things on every single side, and then we're going to need the glass cable to connect it. Oops. And we can connect it to this, and that's actually the reason why I have this full block here, is because it allows power to pass through it. And then again, we have to use the glass cables. Now the problem here is if we try to connect here, we're going to end up connecting to the crafting storage, which is on a different set of channels, and we want to keep those separate. Otherwise it's going to count those channels against our 8. So there's two things we could do. We could come around this way, or we can use a little what do you call those things? I know what I call them. I call them little nubbies, but that's not what they're called. I know you use them when you make the glass cable. The quartz fiber. I think we might already have some. We do. So I'm just going to grab one of those. Stick a piece of quartz fiber here. And then we can then we have to make ourselves some more glass cable, but basically it's not connecting there. It's the data is not connecting there, so it's not a part of that channel. So if we put another glass cable here, it'll connect there, but it will not connect there. But it will actually allow power to pass through, so we don't really need. Actually, there's another block that we can use there. But I forgot what it's called. Let me look it up. Okay, I got it. It is called a anchor, a cable anchor. And it is, we need a Certus quartz cutting knife, cable anchor, and a piece of silver, or tin, or copper, or iron. So we'll just, I guess we'll just do iron. So cable anchor, and it doesn't consume the cutting knife, so we can use that multiple times. And we just basically stick that thing right there. Actually, let's, yeah, whatever. And that will prevent these from connecting. So anytime you need to, what? I'm not even clicking on that. Weird. Okay. Anytime you need to have two Emmy cables running next to each other or something like that, and you don't want them to connect, you can use a cable anchor. Or you can use a quartz fiber as well, but that will allow power to flow through. And it's also more expensive. The cable anchors are cheap. Okay, so now we've got 3 interfaces hooked up to this molecular assembler. So that means right now we can do 27 different crafting recipes. So to make this easier, so that we don't have to keep coming down here to put our patterns in here, we're going to create ourselves a pattern terminal, interface terminal. Sorry about that. Emmy Interface terminal, which is an illuminated panel, an Emmy interface, and a engineering processor. I think we have an illuminated panel already. Yes, we do. We have an Emmy interface, but we don't have a engineering processor. And again, the engineering processor is the diamond one. So it's basically you need a diamond, a piece of redstone, and a piece of silicon with your silicon press. Okay, so we might run into a channel problem here. I'm not sure yet. Let's see. Because I think we already have 8. I think we already have 8 channels here. So if everything stops working, oh no, okay, we must be good. So we're good to start using our interface terminal. So here it shows us all of our Emmy interfaces on our entire network are going to appear in this list. So now let's say if we want to add another recipe, what's something else we do a lot of? How about quartz glass? We do a lot of quartz glass. Grab our recipe, code the pattern, and we just need to go right next door here and throw the pattern in there, and we're all set. There's actually one row for each of our interfaces that's attached to the molecular assembler, because we have 3 interfaces on the molecular assembler. And if we had more, we could scroll down, blah blah blah. And here's our alloy smelter. Now we're going to have 2 alloy smelters, so it's going to get a little confusing because they're both going to be called alloy smelter, but we'll manage. So I'm actually going to finish setting this up, and then I'm going to show you what I got when I'm done. And then we'll move on to auto crafting this mess and this inscriber, which is also going to be quite a mess, but it'll be fun. Alright, I've got all our basic auto crafting set up. Take a peek downstairs. I've got 2 alloy smelters and 1 sag mill, all with interfaces. As you can see, this is the one we started with. This is the one that is set to furnace only mode, and we already have the glass recipe in there. This one is set to alloys only. I actually don't have any recipes in here yet, but we'll throw one in there in a second. And then we've got the sag mill. And what's really cool about the sag mill is the Emmy interface actually has another feature. Besides being able to have patterns, we can also tell it to store items and to keep items in inventory at all times. So actually we don't really need, we probably only need 1, but so if we take this item out, it replaces it from our Emmy inventory, and it'll just keep doing that. So what's really cool is now we can keep our flint fully stocked in here. So if I take some out, it's actually going to start dumping it back in. So as this machine slowly uses flint, it's going to replace it as it goes. That is pretty cool. And I've got a couple of AutoCraft recipes in here already, but let's play with this just a little bit. One example, well, here's our interface terminal, and as you can see, both of the alloy smelters are kind of showing up in one area here. So we just have to remember that the second row is our furnace only auto smelter, and the first row is our alloys only auto smelter. So let's do one example. I have a recipe for blank patterns. So let's say I want to craft 10 of them. It knows it needs sand in order to make glass, so it's actually going to make up some glass for us in our furnace downstairs in our alloy smelter. It's going to grab some iron out of inventory, it's going to grab some glowstone dust out of inventory, it's going to craft some quartz glass because we have 3, but it needs 20, so it's going to craft a bunch of quartz glass. And in order to do the quartz glass, it's going to need some Certus quartz dust, but it only has 19. It needs 6 more, so it's going to grab 6 Certus quartz crystals and make them into Certus quartz dust. And it's also going to use some pure Certus quartz in order to craft the blank patterns. So we just click start. Let me just kind of review the parts that we needed. We did need an Emmy controller. Now, of course, this is assuming that you already have your Emmy system set up. So you've already got your energy acceptor, you've already got your crafting terminal, which that was before we turned it into a, you've already got your Emmy Drive, and if you have questions about those are in a different episode. Earlier I've set those up. So besides the basic Emmy system setup, we're going to need an Emmy controller if you don't already have one, a crafting storage, several Emmy interfaces, a molecular assembler, and then of course the Emmy interface is also for whatever machines you want to set it up to. We need an Emmy Interface terminal. Technically, we don't need the Emmy Interface terminal. I mean, you could just go down here and put your patterns in the Emmy Interfaces, but, you know, why would you want to do that when you can have an Emmy Interface terminal right next to your pattern terminal? And then we also need the pattern terminal. And finally, we're going to need the blank patterns. And basically we just always keep them on hand here, so that whenever we're doing a recipe and we think, oh, you know what, our system needs to remember this, then we can just do that. So I think that is all I'm going to do in this episode, because I'm pretty sure we've hit the time limit already. And in the next episode, I'm going to set up auto crafting for the inscriber and for our crystal growth. That's enough for today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them. Actually, if you have any comments about my interior decorating, I wouldn't mind hearing about those as well. And you might notice that I've got a few goodies on the back shelf there. I actually found those in a chest in a jungle ruin. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like. Click that like button, it's pretty easy to do. And again, if you have any comments, I'm interested in hearing them. So here comes the sun. Thanks for watching.